Imagine a bright red car unlike anything you've ever seen. Its sleek, futuristic form stretching longer than most family sedans, with a cockpit pushed far forward and a broad, unusual rear section. This striking vehicle is the Ford Nucleon, a concept born in 1958 that captured the imagination with its promise of atomic power on wheels. At first glance, it seems to suggest something extraordinary. A family car powered not by gasoline or electricity, but by a nuclear reactor tucked away at the back. But was this bold vision ever anything more than a dream? The truth is, the Nucleon never drove down a single street. It was never tested, sold, or registered. In fact, it never existed as a full-sized functioning automobile at all. What survives today is a 3/8 scale plastic model created by Ford's design team in Dearborn, Michigan. This model was a styling exercise, a glimpse into a future where nuclear energy might one day be small and safe enough to power everyday transportation. The Nucleon reflects a unique moment in American history, when the atomic age sparked both hope and uncertainty about the possibilities of science and technology. Before we unravel the reality behind this enigmatic red car, it's worth stepping back to understand the era that made such a nuclear dream seem not just possible, but inevitable. To understand why this curious car never rolled off the studio floor, we must first step back into the world of 1950s America and its atomic age dreams. In the 1950s, the promise of atomic energy captured the American imagination like few other ideas. The devastating power unleashed during World War II had sparked not only fear but also a profound hope that nuclear technology could revolutionize everyday life. Across the nation, the atom was hailed as a source of nearly limitless clean energy, capable of transforming everything from household appliances to transportation. This period, known as the Atomic Age, was marked by a unique blend of optimism and anxiety as people grappled with the potential and risks of harnessing nuclear power. Nuclear energy was no longer confined to military applications. Instead, it was presented as a peaceful force that could fuel a new era of prosperity. The government, scientists, and major corporations enthusiastically promoted the idea that atomic power would soon provide cheap, abundant electricity for homes and industries. Popular culture embraced this vision, filling magazines, television shows, and advertisements with images of gleaming futuristic cities powered by reactors and vehicles propelled by nuclear engines. It was within this cultural climate that the concept of a nuclear-powered automobile emerged. Designers and engineers speculated about how the compact, efficient energy of the atom might replace gasoline engines and redefine the very notion of travel. This was an era when the boundaries between science fiction and engineering were fluid, and the idea of a car powered by a small onboard nuclear reactor seemed less far-fetched than it might today. However, the enthusiasm for nuclear-powered cars was largely speculative. While the vision was compelling, the technical realities presented formidable obstacles. At the time, nuclear reactors were massive, complex, and required heavy shielding to protect occupants from radiation. The idea that a reactor could be miniaturized, rendered safe, and integrated into a family car remained beyond reach. Challenges included not only the physical size and weight of shielding materials, but also concerns about accident safety, maintenance, radioactive waste handling, and public acceptance. Despite these hurdles, the concept of nuclear-powered transportation reflected a broader societal fascination with what the future might hold. It was a time when designers and corporations openly explored bold ideas, pushing the limits of imagination to visualize how new forms of energy could reshape daily life. These exploratory projects were less about immediate feasibility and more about inspiring the public and signaling technological leadership. The Ford Nucleon, conceived in 1958, was a product of this era. Rather than a practical engineering prototype, it was a styling exercise that embodied the hopes and dreams of atomic-age America. Its distinctive design, with a forward passenger compartment and a large rear section imagined to house a compact nuclear reactor, mirrored the era's belief that atomic power could eventually be harnessed safely and efficiently for personal transportation. This period of history reminds us how technological optimism can inspire visionary concepts, even when the technology itself is not yet ready. The story of the Nucleon is inseparable from the wider cultural context of the 1950s, a time when the atom promised to transform American life in ways both exciting and uncertain. Amid this fervor, Ford embraced the challenge of imagining a nuclear-powered car, starting a design journey rooted in hope and speculation. In the late 1950s, Ford Motor Company was a powerhouse of innovation and imagination, especially within its design studios in Dearborn, Michigan. Here, a talented and often anonymous group of designers worked tirelessly to envision the future of automobiles, vehicles that not only met practical needs but also captured the spirit of an era defined by rapid technological change and boundless optimism. This was a time when the automobile was more than transportation. It was a symbol of progress, freedom, and the American dream. Ford's design culture embraced this ethos, using concept cars as a canvas to explore bold ideas and to spark public fascination. These concept vehicles were not necessarily intended for production or everyday use. Instead, they served as styling exercises, public relations tools, and imaginative experiments that reflected the company's hopes about what lay ahead. The Nucleon fit squarely into this tradition. It was conceived not as a working prototype, but as a speculative model, an artistic and technical statement about the possibilities of future energy sources and vehicle design. Ford's designers imagined a car powered by a compact nuclear reactor, an idea that, while far from engineering reality, allowed them to rethink the vehicle's form entirely. The Nucleon's striking proportions, its unusually forward passenger compartment and broad rear section, were dictated by the concept of housing a heavy, self-contained nuclear power unit at the back. This bold styling choice illustrated how energy technology could influence automotive design, pushing beyond the familiar lines of gasoline-powered cars. While the Nucleon never advanced beyond a 3/8 scale plastic model, roughly 75 inches in length, it demonstrated Ford's willingness to engage with futuristic themes and to challenge conventional design boundaries. The project reflected a broader corporate enthusiasm to publicly explore how emerging technologies might transform daily life, even if those technologies were still theoretical or far from practical application. Importantly, the designers behind the Nucleon remained largely unnamed in historical records, underscoring how such concept projects were collaborative efforts within a culture that valued collective creativity over individual credit. These styling exercises were as much about shaping public imagination and media attention as they were about technical feasibility. The Nucleon was never road-tested, crash-tested, or engineered for real-world conditions. It existed primarily as a vision, a physical question posed by Ford about what transportation might become if nuclear energy could be harnessed safely and efficiently on a small scale. This approach was typical for Ford during this period, as the company balanced genuine curiosity about future technologies with the realities of market demands and engineering limits. The Nucleon's story, situated within this environment, helps us understand why it took the form it did. A striking futuristic scale model designed to provoke thought and represent optimism, rather than a tangible vehicle destined for the road. One such vision was the Nucleon, a daring styling exercise that would place a nuclear reactor at the heart of its design. Measuring just over 6 feet long, the Ford Nucleon model was a tangible glimpse into a future that never arrived. Built in 1958 at Ford's headquarters in Dearborn, Michigan, this 3/8 scale representation was crafted primarily from plastic, standing out as a striking example of mid-century design speculation rather than functional engineering. At approximately 75 inches in length, the model's unusual proportions immediately catch the eye. The passenger compartment was pushed far forward, creating a long, sleek nose that stretched ahead of the driver and passengers. Behind this, the rear section was broad and bulky, deliberately shaped to suggest the housing of a powerful, self-contained nuclear reactor. This rear-mounted power unit was not just a styling flourish. It embodied Ford's speculative vision of a compact atomic engine that might one day fit inside a family car. Yet, despite the bold concept, the Nucleon model contained no actual engine or reactor. It was never intended to move under its own power, never fitted with any mechanical components. Instead, it served as a physical manifestation of an idea, a three-dimensional statement about what the future of transportation might hold if nuclear technology could be miniaturized and made safe enough for everyday use. The model's red body contrasted with dark roof glazing, emphasizing the separation between the forward cabin and the imagined power source behind. Its proportions were unlike any conventional car of the era, highlighting both the promise and the challenge of integrating a nuclear reactor into a vehicle. The design reflected the optimism of the atomic age, when nuclear energy was widely seen as a revolutionary force that could reshape industries and daily life. But it also exposed the gap between that hopeful vision and the practical realities of automotive engineering. The Nucleon was never tested, driven, or even structurally evaluated for safety. It was not a prototype or a working concept car, but a styling exercise, a public relations gesture that invited the public to imagine a nuclear-powered future. This scale model remains the only physical artifact of Ford's nuclear car idea, distinct from the many speculative images, replicas, or digital reconstructions that have appeared since. Its size and materials speak to its purpose, a design study frozen in time, a symbol of mid-century fascination with atomic power rather than a step toward production. Seen up close, the Nucleon's model invites reflection on the era's blend of technological hope and uncertainty. Its very existence as a static display piece underscores how, in the late 1950s, the boundaries between science fiction and industrial ambition often blurred. The model's careful detailing, down to the imagined reactor compartment, was less about engineering feasibility and more about sparking public curiosity. It stands as a reminder of how design can embody both aspiration and the limits of what was then possible. Its bold design hinted at revolutionary power beneath the surface, a promise the model itself could never fulfill. At the rear of the Ford Nucleon model, designers envisioned a compact nuclear reactor quietly powering the car's every mile. This bold idea reflected the atomic age optimism of the late 1950s, when nuclear energy was seen as a revolutionary force poised to transform everyday life. The Nucleon's unusual proportions, its broad rear section and forward-positioned passenger compartment, were a direct result of this imagined power source. Ford conceived the rear-mounted power package as a self-contained unit housing a miniature nuclear reactor, separate and shielded from the occupants ahead. This setup was intended to isolate the radiation and heat generated by nuclear fission, allowing the passenger area to remain safe and comfortable. It's important to stress that the Nucleon was purely a styling concept. No actual nuclear reactor was ever installed in the model, nor was there any functional powertrain connected to it. The design assumed that, sometime in the future, nuclear reactors would become small enough, light enough, and safe enough for everyday automotive use, a speculative leap rather than an engineering reality. At that time, nuclear technology was still largely confined to large, stationary power plants and military applications, where size and weight were less limiting factors. Nuclear fission, the process powering reactors, involves splitting atoms to release energy. This energy can be harnessed to generate heat, which in turn can produce mechanical power. However, controlling this process safely requires substantial shielding and complex systems to manage radiation and reactor stability. The Nucleon's rear compartment was imagined to contain this heavy shielding, which in reality would have posed significant challenges. Radiation protection involves dense materials, often lead or thick steel, which add considerable weight and bulk, factors difficult to reconcile with automotive design and performance. Beyond shielding, there were other unresolved issues. Maintaining and refueling a nuclear reactor in a car would require specialized facilities and protocols, far beyond the convenience of a gas station. Handling nuclear waste safely and ensuring security against accidental or intentional damage were concerns that the concept did not address, as the model was never tested for such factors. In essence, the Nucleon encapsulated the hope that nuclear reactors might one day be miniaturized and simplified enough to power a family car, quietly and efficiently. This vision mirrored broader cultural expectations during the 1950s, when nuclear energy was often portrayed as the key to a bright, abundant future. Yet, the gap between this hopeful imagination and the practical realities of nuclear engineering was vast. The Nucleon's design, with its rear-mounted reactor housing, remains a striking example of how industrial designers tried to visualize the future of transportation through the lens of cutting-edge technology. It also highlights the limits of such speculation. No matter how compelling the styling or how optimistic the assumptions, the technical and safety challenges of a nuclear-powered car were far beyond what could be managed at the time or for many decades to come. Its bold design hinted at revolutionary power beneath the surface, a promise the model itself could never fulfill. Yet, beneath this vision lay formidable technical challenges that would prove insurmountable for decades. The dream of powering a car with atomic energy ran headlong into hard scientific and engineering realities. Nuclear reactors, even in the 1950s, were large, heavy, and complex machines, not something easily miniaturized for a family automobile. The Ford Nucleon concept imagined a compact rear-mounted reactor, but the technology to build a reactor small enough, light enough, and safe enough simply did not exist. One of the greatest challenges was radiation shielding. To protect passengers and bystanders from harmful radiation, a nuclear power source requires thick, dense materials, often lead or concrete in stationary plants, to absorb and block radiation. Applying this kind of shielding in a car would have added tremendous weight, making the vehicle unwieldy and impractical. That bulky protective barrier would also have posed severe packaging problems, forcing designers to accommodate a heavy, immovable mass at the rear, while still trying to keep the passenger compartment safe and comfortable. Beyond shielding, controlling a nuclear reactor in a vehicle would have been an unprecedented challenge. Reactors operate through precise nuclear fission reactions, which require sophisticated control systems to maintain safety and efficiency. In the 1950s, such systems were large, delicate, and designed for fixed installations. Translating that technology into a mobile platform exposed to vibrations, temperature changes, and the unpredictability of road conditions was beyond the capabilities of the era. Heat management presented another serious hurdle. Nuclear reactors generate immense heat that must be carefully dissipated to prevent overheating. Conventional cars use radiators and airflow to cool engines, but a nuclear reactor's thermal output and cooling requirements are on a completely different scale. Designing a compact, reliable cooling system capable of handling that heat in a confined space was a problem without a practical solution. Maintenance and waste handling added further complications. Nuclear reactors produce radioactive waste that must be safely contained and disposed of. Servicing a reactor inside a car would have required specialized facilities and procedures, posing risk to technicians and the public. Moreover, refueling or replacing the nuclear fuel was a complex operation, far removed from the simple gas station fill-ups or battery swaps of conventional vehicles. Public safety and acceptance also loomed large. The very idea of a nuclear-powered car raised fears about accidents, radiation leaks, and environmental contamination. Unlike conventional fuels, radiation cannot be extinguished or simply cleaned up. Even a minor collision could potentially expose occupants or emergency responders to radiation hazards, making regulatory approval and consumer trust major obstacles. It's important to clarify common misconceptions. A nuclear reactor is not comparable to an atomic bomb. Nuclear fission in a reactor is a controlled chain reaction designed to avoid explosions. Even so, the risk of radiation exposure in a crash scenario was a genuine concern, not a sensational exaggeration. These engineering challenges were general realities of nuclear technology at the time, not specific tests or failures experienced by Ford with the Nucleon. The car never progressed beyond a scale model, so no actual reactor was ever installed or operated. The Nucleon stands as a physical representation of a hopeful but impractical vision, one that underestimated the complexity of adapting atomic power to everyday transportation. These challenges ensured the Nucleon would never move beyond the drawing board and scale model stage. The Ford Nucleon's striking and unconventional shape offers more than just a glimpse into 1950s futuristic styling. It reveals the practical and speculative challenges of imagining a nuclear-powered car. Unlike typical automobiles of its era, the Nucleon's design features an unusually forward-placed passenger compartment, while the rear section expands dramatically into a broad, bulky form. This wasn't merely an aesthetic choice. It was a direct response to the concept's core idea, a self-contained nuclear reactor powering the vehicle from the back. In the late 1950s, Ford's designers envisioned that future nuclear reactors could be compact and safe enough to fit inside a family car. The rear-mounted power unit was imagined as a heavy shielded package containing the reactor and its radiation protection. The broad rear end of the Nucleon's model visually communicated this massive, weighty power source. It acted as a counterbalance to the weight of the front wheels and suspension, suggesting how such a car might maintain stability despite the unconventional packaging. Meanwhile, the passenger compartment was pushed far forward, separating occupants from the imagined nuclear core. This design choice reflected contemporary concerns about radiation safety and the unknown risks of nuclear technology. Placing passengers ahead of the reactor symbolized a protective buffer zone, an architectural solution to reassure the public that the power source would be isolated and secure. This spatial arrangement contrasts sharply with the balanced proportions of conventional cars in the 1950s, which typically centered the engine near the front and distributed mass more evenly. The Nucleon's proportions are exaggerated, almost sculptural, emphasizing the speculative nature of the concept. It was less about practical automotive design and more about visualizing a future where atomic energy reshaped everyday transportation. The model's elongated, streamlined shape also echoed the optimistic view of nuclear power as clean, efficient, and futuristic. The sleek lines and smooth surfaces aligned with the era's fascination with space-age aesthetics and technological progress. Yet, beneath this hopeful exterior lay unresolved technical realities. The size and weight of effective radiation shielding alone would have presented daunting engineering obstacles, making the imagined compact reactor an elusive goal. In this way, the Nucleon's design serves as a physical metaphor for the hopes and uncertainties of the atomic age. It embodies a moment when imagination outpaced technology, capturing the tension between the dream of limitless energy and the practical limits of physics and safety. The unusual proportions invite us to consider how radically different vehicles might have looked if nuclear power had truly revolutionized transportation. Ultimately, the Nucleon's shape tells a story of balancing nuclear dreams with the practical demands of passenger safety and vehicle design. It stands as a testament to a time when automakers dared to envision a radically different future, even if that future remained just out of reach. But even the most daring design could not overcome the technological gaps that remained wide open. Online, the Ford Nucleon often appears as a fully operational nuclear-powered car, a futuristic marvel that once roamed the streets. But this image, captivating as it may be, is far from the documented truth. The reality is that the Nucleon never moved beyond a 3/8 scale plastic model created in 1958. Despite this, dramatic photographs and incomplete captions have circulated widely on the internet, transforming a speculative styling exercise into a legend of a working nuclear automobile. This mythic version frequently blurs the line between fact and fiction, leading many to believe the Nucleon was a functioning prototype rather than a design concept rooted in atomic age optimism. The genuine 1958 model, housed in Ford's collection, is unmistakable with its red body, dark roof glazing, and distinctive proportions shaped by the imagined rear-mounted nuclear reactor. Yet many online depictions stray from this, showing full-size versions with exaggerated features or modernized details that never existed. Digital artwork, replicas, and AI-generated images often portray the Nucleon as a sleek, road-ready vehicle, complete with glowing reactors or futuristic lighting, elements that have no basis in the original concept. Such visual exaggerations fuel misunderstandings, overshadowing the Nucleon's true significance. It was never engineered to run, tested, or sold. Instead, it served as a physical expression of a time when America grappled with the promises and perils of nuclear power. These myths persist partly because the Nucleon's striking design and provocative idea invite speculation. Without careful historical context, it's easy to conflate the model's imaginative vision with actual automotive engineering. Recognizing the difference matters, not only to preserve the integrity of the Nucleon story, but also to appreciate what it truly represents. Far from a failed nuclear car, It is a symbol of 1950s industrial imagination and the limits of technological prediction. Understanding how the Nucleon's narrative shifted online encourages a more nuanced perspective on how we remember visionary concepts. This confusion is amplified by the way images travel and evolve online. A single speculative rendering or a stylized illustration, once detached from its original context, can quickly be mistaken for archival evidence. As these visuals are shared and reshared, captions often lose nuance, and the line between what was imagined and what was real becomes increasingly blurred. The Nucleon's story is especially vulnerable to this process because its very purpose was to provoke thought about the future, not to document a finished achievement. In the digital age, the allure of a nuclear-powered car, combined with the striking look of the Nucleon's model, makes it a perfect candidate for reinterpretation and embellishment. This phenomenon highlights a broader challenge in how we remember experimental concepts, the temptation to fill in historical gaps with speculation or wishful thinking. By examining the Nucleon's journey from a physical model to an internet legend, we see how easily the boundaries of history can shift in the public imagination. Separating fact from fiction reveals what the Nucleon really symbolizes about technology and imagination. Though the Ford Nucleon never moved beyond a plastic scale model, its design and concept anticipated many of the challenges that still shape our approach to alternative energy and vehicle design. The idea of a rear-mounted, self-contained power unit foreshadowed ongoing questions about how to package new propulsion systems efficiently within a car's architecture. By positioning the passenger compartment far forward and dedicating a broad rear section to house the imagined nuclear reactor, the Nucleon represented a radical rethink of vehicle layout, one driven by the need to accommodate bulky, heavy power sources. This departure from conventional designs prefigured the way modern electric vehicles place batteries and motors differently than traditional gasoline engines. Yet, the Nucleon's vision also reveals the limits of optimistic technological prediction. The concept assumed that nuclear reactors could be miniaturized, light, and safe enough for everyday use, a prospect that remains elusive due to fundamental engineering and safety challenges. Radiation shielding alone would have created significant weight and packaging issues, while concerns about accident safety, maintenance, waste disposal, and public acceptance presented obstacles that no solution at the time, or even today, has fully overcome. The Nucleon story reflects the 1950s atomic age mindset, an era marked by both hope for nuclear power's potential and anxiety about its risks. While nuclear energy was promoted as a future source of abundant civilian power, the practical realities of reactor technology and societal acceptance slowed any real-world application in transportation. The Nucleon was less a serious engineering project and more a design and public relations exercise, embodying the spirit of exploration and speculation that defined the decade. Its unusual proportions and bold styling captured the imagination, but those same features also underscored the technical obstacles that prevented a functioning nuclear car from ever materializing. Importantly, the Nucleon's legacy is not one of failure but of inquiry. It posed a provocative question about what the future of transportation might look like, challenging assumptions and encouraging people to think beyond existing technologies. In that way, the Nucleon anticipated ongoing debates about alternative fuels, vehicle packaging, and how society embraces or resists new technologies. The Nucleon's enduring fascination also lies in how it blurred the line between technological aspiration and public imagination. As a physical artifact, the scale model invited viewers to picture a world transformed by atomic power, even as the realities of nuclear engineering remained out of reach. This interplay between bold visual storytelling and speculative science was characteristic of the atomic age, when corporations and designers often used dramatic concepts to spark conversation about the future. The Nucleon's presence in museums and its frequent appearance in books and online forums today demonstrate how a single, unrealized idea can continue to provoke curiosity and debate about what is possible and what remains fantasy. Understanding these insights helps us appreciate the Nucleon not as a failure, but as a provocative question posed to the future. Though the Ford Nucleon never moved under its own power, its story continues to provoke wonder about what might have been. This unusual scale model, created in 1958, was never intended to be a functioning vehicle. Instead, it served as a physical expression of a very particular moment in American history, a time when nuclear energy symbolized boundless possibility and the promise of a transformed future. The Nucleon embodied mid-century optimism, imagining a world where compact, safe nuclear reactors could power everyday transportation. Yet, it also reflected the limits of technological prediction. The challenges of radiation shielding, safety, maintenance, and public acceptance were obstacles that no design exercise could overcome at the time. Far from a failed production car, the Nucleon was a conversation starter, a design exercise that invited people to imagine how emerging technologies might reshape daily life. Its bold proportions, with a forward passenger cabin and a broad rear section for a hypothetical nuclear power source, captured the hopes and anxieties of the atomic age. Today, the surviving model stands as a fascinating artifact of industrial imagination, a reminder that innovation often begins as speculation. The Nucleon's legacy lies not in the roads it never traveled, but in the questions it raised about energy, design, and the future. Was it visionary, unrealistic, or valuable precisely because it challenged people to dream beyond what was possible? That question remains open, encouraging us to imagine again in an era where technology continues to evolve in unexpected ways. It remains a vivid reminder of an era when the future seemed both bright and uncertain, asking us to imagine again.